everyone, and welcome to another episode of Identity Library. My name is Veronica Becher, and today I'm joined by Mingduo.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes, I got it.
Let's go, we did
it. and or word, it depends what
Yeah,
name you want to
I
go for.
always gave two options to people, so either one works for me. And they all had a very long history, so
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, now I'm actually curious. And dear listeners, if you're curious who this person is in front of me, well, we have also a really funny story to tell. This is my inspiration to be the international orientation leader. The guy that was sitting in front of the whole audience and just telling a story about his major. And I was just thinking, man, there's at least someone who's studying something he's really passionate about and he's not scared to pursue his career. But would you like to introduce yourself properly, maybe?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. I am really happy to be here. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Mingduo, Mingduo. Sounds like you had a question mark after the name, right? So Mingduo, and you can also call me Ward, W-R-D, instead. Either way works for me. Like I said, I gave two options to people, so yeah. I just graduated from NC State in December 2024. My concentration is creative writing, English BA, with the film studies minor, and I'm working on my application to library science for the master's schools.
Exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's also very challenging. So we can talk more about it later. Yeah.
No, but so true. Like, I don't know. I admire that you, I don't know, how many programs did you apply to?
So far I have already submitted 4 programs, both library science and creative writing. Only one creative writing. It's NC State's MFA. 3 other library science programs, one in UIUC, one in Hong Kong, one at the UNC Chapel Hill. But I will, work on more after I go back home, so I have more time to prepare everything, all that.
This is just, I don't know. I applied to one MBA program right now, and it's stressful as heck.
Yes.
And just looking into all the other applications, I'm like, how the heck do they expect us to have so much time to apply to so many programs in such a small, period of time? But yeah, maybe speaking of Hong Kong, would you like to, I was debating for a long time what I would like to address on this podcast, and I was so sure that I want to have you here, but I was like, what should we talk about? Should we go into your origin or rather your hobbies? Oh my gosh, there's so many things to talk about. Maybe let's just dive in and start with your origin, your background, where you're from, how did you get here? Maybe a little history background.
Yeah, sure. So I am also an international student. I'm from China mainland, from Xi'an, Shanxi province. Have you ever heard about terracotta warriors? They were found in my city, and I came here. I start my program in creative writing in fall 2020, and came here in Raleigh in August 2022, and to really get to the on-campus study, because before that it's all COVID. And I start doing creative writing, or writing in general, when I was very young, and I just love seeing what's in our garden, what about the trees, the birds, and then I wrote it down. I drew pictures about it, and that's pretty much what inspired me to really go into the creative writing field.
This is so I didn't know that. This
Yes.
is so interesting. No, seriously. I'm on the other side of this whole thing. I love reading the books that people write, but creative writing is more than that, right? What is it entailing creative writing? What is falling into this whole degree?
I am not good at STEM at all. I can't do math, which is very, I think, rare among, international student community. I think I am the only student, international student, who was majored in creative writing. And I feel proud of it, because that brings the diversity to NC State. You know, with my upbringing, I wrote most of my stories based on what I've seen, what I've experienced. You know, and as always, domestic fictions would have happened in a family. And yes, the story came from my experience, how I interact with my family or friends. So you read my story, you will know part of my life, more or less, though it's definitely fiction, but yeah, it's rooted from my life, I think. Yes, yes. I one of my short story just got published um, in Windhover, our NC State literary magazine, literary and art magazine, volume 59.
What's the name of the short story?
The name of the short story is called Dumplings. It's a food which tastes really good.
I know dumplings. No.
Yes, right. Yeah, so the story is uh, I got inspirations last time. I came back to my hometown, saw my grandma's making dumplings. Because I love cooking, but I have no experience in making dumplings at that time. So I was helping her because, you know, people age, and I noticed how much she aged, you know, from like 10 years ago, because she was with me the whole time, you know, right after I was born. So I think, you know, that's a good thing to write about because we see the change of our family members, and we appreciate, you know, their work. Like for my grandma, she cooked for the whole family. So I love everyone. So I say, why not write about a story about the person I love the most within my family? So yeah, that's how the story, uh, that's how the inspirations came up to my mind. Yeah.
Are you planning on publishing like a book, like a novel, or is it more short stories? Anything that you feel like you actually want to pursue that part of the career path that is unfolding? Or would you say that creative writing is also a major way you can like go into a completely different field with?
I think the major itself is it brought you so many paths for your future. Like you could go study film, you go study law, you go to medical school. But for me, I think because I applied to our MFA program at NC State, so I will keep writing stories. So far, I haven't finished, you know, like a whole book. I wrote fan fictions before, but it's chapters rather than just like a completed book. But if I, you know, go to the MFA program, if I got accepted by the program, then I would definitely write my own book and then try to get published because that is part of, you know, what we're doing in the MFA. So
This is like such a different world. I'm serious. Like I just seeing how someone actually writes the story instead of being the one who's reading it is so like impactful, I think, too. And just like the inspirations, like you said, from your family, from your grandma, how things unfold. Would you say that your life in China, well, you are Chinese, but you said you incorporate these things into your stories, right? Even though you're writing in the United States. Um, how would you say it shaped your perspective of living in the United States, knowing that you're from a different background? Are there like certain specific things?
I think, well, I mean, up to like which aspect we're talking about. I mean, the creative writing community that we have at NC State is a very like friendly, very welcoming community. So, you know, I wrote what I want to wrote. Could be foreign stories, could be things happen in North Carolina, or you know, you wrote whatever you wanna. You write what you want to write about. Um, the story itself, I would say, mostly both the plot, the characters, the expositions, you know, about the place, about the food, they're all related to China or Chinese cultures in a very, you know, in a very significant way. But I think how I connected to the U.S. in general, I think I brought, you know, this nuanced family dynamics to people who lived here because I've talked with people who came from whole different family backgrounds, and they told me, "Oh, that's actually how you interact with your family. That is completely different with how I interact with my parents or my siblings, because there's more than one character in that, more than the main character and the grandma in that story. So, that's more than how I interact with my cousins, my brothers, sisters. So I think it just brings a different perspective to like the students from Carolina to see how world is different in another continent or in on the other side of the globe, I think.
Do you have an example of like a family dynamic that you've seen in your family specifically because of your culture that you haven't seen here, and it's something like, oh, this is something I like or something I don't like?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, based on what I talked with the friends, I mean, they are definitely more quote unquote individual than me. I mean, I can't speak for can't speak for everyone in China. I think especially for me, I mean, I'm like 22 now. I'm gonna turn 23 in a month, and I'm still having a very close connection with my both of my parents. Like I hug them, I kiss them on the cheek. I think this is a very different culture than we have in here in North Carolina or like in the U.S. in general. I know people who moved out after they're 18, or they don't talk a lot with their parents, but I think it's also very nuanced. It depends on who you are. I mean, there are definitely people who are similar to me in the US, but I think at least for the people that I hang out the most, I am my family, our dynamic is definitely very different from what they have. Yeah.
Is there a specific like family tradition that you really like?
Yes, I think so because I s- because I see how I interact with my parents or any family members is how my parents interact with their like with my grandparents. So I think it's more of like a family culture, or it's like how we interact throughout all these generations. And I think it's really very hard to change. Like I interact less with any of my family members because that's how I was educated when I was a kid. Love your parents because they love me well. So it's like I love them. I keep a good relationship with them. It's like sharing my love with them in return because they treat me well. They loved me when I was a kid. It's like that.
I'm curious, did they ever pose for you to go into the field of creative writing?
No, they fully support me to go to the fields of creative writing. Though everyone in my family knew that, I think it's going to be very challenging because you're writing in another language, you're writing in English, which is not your native speaker. So it's definitely going to be very challenging. But I feel very, grateful and fortunate that my parents, my grandma, all of my family members, they fully support me to go study what I love. And I think that's what you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. I told everyone, hey, I chose creative writing simply because I love writing. And yeah, and I think it is also because I have, the family supports me 100%, so I can, be successful.
Do you think it would be possible for you to get there if your family would have not supported you?
I think definitely, yeah, because I share my writings with my family, because I wrote both manuscripts in Chinese and Mandarin and in English. So, because, they are my inspiration. So I think letting them read my story will definitely make them feel happy because they are seeing themselves in my fictions.
This is such an interesting thing because I was reading a book just recently. It's a Korean book. Was really popular. Was it the Hyundam Dong bookshop? I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. This is like again, I have no one who ever taught me how to pronounce it. But there's the story is basically about there's like one chapter where this woman meets her favorite author, and she asks him a question, and it's would you say your writing is like you as a person? Like, does your writing and the style and how you portray your characters actually reflect of who you are as a person or not? Does that make sense? And I was just something that is, I don't know, it stuck with me because I was thinking how sometimes we like to read books to escape our own world or like to have a new perspective, learn something. But what is if I'm the author? Do I always write something that is actually a reflection of me? And since you were talking about how you always incorporate something that is like close to home, close to your any like found memories, people that you love, people that you appreciate, traditions, etc. Would you say that your writing is actually a display of yourself, or rather something you distance yourself from?
I think, well, let's use figures. Let's use,
Yes. Yes,
let's
go
use
ahead.
numbers. Let's use numbers, which is something that I'm not very good at. Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
I think, wow, 80% of my writings reflects who I am. And for the rest of the 20s, they are not completely like a runaway from my life or something. No, I think they still have what you see in the rest of the 80%. Um, but it's more of like I wrote science fictions and I love 80s. I
Oh my
love
gosh, yes, I know. Go ahead, go ahead. This is your stage.
I love 80s and I so and like if we watched Blade Runners where we love this cyberpunk concept. So I think, hey, what about putting the 80s Hong Kong into as the background of the science fiction. So that's like how I run away from it because I love the culture of that time, and I would use the name of the songs that was released in the 80s, though the story could happen in like what 30, 25 or something like that. That's like a run. That's like a runaway, but the story, the science fiction story itself, could still relate to the family, to the romance, all that. So it's not like fully run away from the genre that I write about or from myself. No, I think I feel very satisfied now. Like I graduated with a bachelor's degree in creative writing, and that is something that I kept doing, and I love, something I love to do. So I feel grateful for that, and I feel grateful for having people to support me doing something I love. And I have my achievements. And I wrote stories. Some of them got published. I also worked for NC State as a student photographer for a whole year. So I feel very satisfied. And because of that, I don't write about something that would let people assume that I'm running away, have this running away concept.
But isn't like the setting that you just described to us, right? The Hong Kong like 80s and like oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Wouldn't you say the setting is still a depiction of something you like, right? Something that you are interested in, like a certain time that has somehow maybe I don't know. I think like it doesn't have to correlate to you specifically. You don't have to live in that time, but it's still something that you enjoy, right? So you use it and then combine it with something that is more modern, some feelings or some characters that you would maybe describe as more modern characters, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think like it's not like a run away from a negative thing. It's like run away to get what I want. Because we live in 2025 now, and there's no way we can go back to the 80s and 90s because you can't change the time. I mean, probably you can't. I don't know. I'm an English major, but yeah, just kidding. I mean, we're living 2025. The way we dress, the way we speak, the music we listen today is still very different from the 80s or 90s. So I think for me, since I love that time era, the way for me to let myself live in that time is through writing.
Have you heard of the movie Midnight in Paris?
I believe so, yes.
I got introduced to this movie literally a month ago. I feel like a little bit sad about that, but I'm not a big I'm gonna be upfront. I'm not a big fan of like romanticizing Friends or like French. Well, I'm thinking I do like those certain like art, certain art that is like depicted in the around the French Revolution, etc. But I think I never romanticized Friends itself. And this movie basically what it does, it combines the reality with a story where this guy every single time when he enters this car at midnight, he gets like kind of goes through like a time machine where he sees friends in the like 80s and 60s and 50s and so on, and how he meets some authors like book authors. He meets Hemingway, and like it's kind of like really interesting movie. But it's the same thing. It just reminded me of what you just said, how you use like the 80s to put in like a setting, and then the characters are maybe more modern, but you have them in the same setting, like act out things that you correlate to. I don't know, really random thing. But where would you like? Where do you start actually? If you like, where do you get your inspiration from?
You mean like for
Like a short story?
for short story?
Yeah.
Let's use Dumplings as the example. It was like few days after I went back home, and I haven't. I think I spent the the first 2 years. I mean, after 2022, I first went back home in winter 2024, and my grandma was making dumplings for me because it's like the tradition. You make dumplings to welcome whoever came back home. So she asked me to help her knead the dough because she's 70s now. She's in her 70s now, so I helped her out. And then I said, well, any other things I could do? She said, well, no, just go be busy. I said, well, that's why I went back home. I finished all my things. I'm here for the family. So I just stood there, looking, watching, or I think watching or learning how to stir the fillings. But I also noticed like the blood, what do you call blood veins on her hand, and how the hand has changed in so many years because she cooked for everyone every day. You wash the dishes, using the cold water, all that. So it changes her skin, the skin on her hand. And I realized, oh, wow, it's been so many years. We all knew that she did a lot for the family, but we never, never like jump into the detail, actually see how much she aged because she did so many things for us. And remembering what I saw at that time, that is how I got my inspirations.
It's basically things that you pay attention in your
Yes.
world, and then it's like, oh, this is something that inspired me. Maybe I should just write something about it, or something you feel connected to. But it's like being observant, right?
Yeah.
And taking in everything that is around you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Like looking
interesting.
at the Legos on the desk.
Yes.
It could be something related to whoever's sitting on the seat. And if there's really someone trying to put the Lego in one piece, I could look at it, look at how he or she built this little thingy, and then I would imagine, or like if I know this person, I would, rewind and see how this process reminds me of the days that we spent together, like that. It's a very small thing, you know, playing with the Lego. You put the bricks together. No one, I don't, of course, not no one, but I think for the most of the time, we're focused on Lego itself. But if I'm writing a story, or if I want to write a story, I would, focus on the actions than the Lego, like the object.
Is the object your end result, and
Mm,
then the process is the little Lego pieces?
the Lego is more of like a bridge
Okay.
or like a hook, like how we were trained to
Mm-hmm.
write the academic essays, right?
Yes.
It's like the hook, it starts with a Lego. But then thinking about you're watching a film, the camera is pointing at the Lego now. You have a close up on the pieces, and then it pans to the hand, and then it pans up to the face of this person, and we see another close up of his face. We we could probably read the emotions from this person's eyes, and from start from that, I could write whatever is in my mind. Probably, where we've been together before, where the things we've talked about before. So yeah, Lego is like a bridge, connects both me and this person, or it serves as like the first paragraph of the fiction.
Hmm. I really like the Lego idea. Yeah, we have on the table, just since no one sees it, different flowers, botanical like Lego sets, and I have no idea how they got here, but I'm not questioning it.
Oh, they're not yours?
No, they're not. I don't know whoever bought it and decided to put it out there.
So we can take it. We'll take them away after we finish this podcast.
Exactly, we're just gonna steal. Oh my gosh, no. But no, this is interesting. Do you have a role model, like someone you're looking up to?
I mean, of course, name. It's gonna be Andy Lau. Right?
We need to give a full introduction.
It's gonna be Andy Lau, capital A, capital L. Right? All right. Role model. I mean, he's definitely a role model. I think he's just like us. I mean, he's a celebrity. Really good at acting, both acting and singing, and he was also in many famous TV shows in the 80s. So yeah, I think his prime is like the 80s, 90s. But now he's like focused on the film productions and the singing. So yeah, I think he's just like us, like normal people. But so people say he doesn't have talent, and I don't disagree with that. I think yes, he's just like us, a normal person. But what's really good, or why I consider him as the role model, is because I think he tried to explore all the possibilities that he can do with whatever resource that he got. He graduated from this acting class. A lot of people graduate from the acting class in Hong Kong in the 80s, TVB, but he could be the one that is the most famous person, in that class. I think it's the 10th class or something. That's how they call it. Each year there will be one, and then and then keep going like that. So he works really hard. He was never a singer before he learned how to sing. He was doing his show business, acting for this director, that director, in this TV show and that TV shows, and then he decided to go into the music field of music, and then start producing his own songs, write the lyrics, all that. So I think, because I've listened, compared his musics in the early 80s and then the 90s, 2000s, and I see the change in his voice and the way he sings. So I really appreciate how much work he have done, and that really inspires me. Like when I'm writing the stories, when I'm making my own film, I would listen to his songs because I really appreciate him as my role model. So it kind of like, motivates me to keep doing the best or trying my best.
Would you say people need role models if they go into these type of fields? Is it good to have, even like as a writer, right? If you're starting and you have a role model and you want to keep close to someone's style because you think that inspires you or helps you move forward, or would you say find your own voice rather than looking up to someone?
I mean, both having your own voice and having a role model are equally important. I think having a role model is important, but don't turn yourself into that person, because you are not that person. I'm not Andy Lau. I just like him. I just love his songs. I love his TVs, movies. I bought the same costumes he wore in in the film in the 90s. I think probably me is being too crazy. That's, that people call me crazy fans, but I never consider myself as him because I knew that I can't be him. I have what I can do the best, which is like writing fictions, or the way I make films, my cinematography. How's it different from his? So I think it's more of just learn from his technique and then see if that would benefits me when I'm creating my work.
What is something you like? Like you said, you were talking about techniques. What
Yeah.
is like a technique that you feel like, could you describe it?
Yeah, so he's an actor, and he was in Wong Kar-wai's film. The film is called As Tears Go By, and one of the very famous or really fancy, technique or cinematography technique that you would see in Wong Kar-wai's film is called the step printing, where there are similar words to that, but I call it step printing, which is kind of like slow motion, but it gets the whole image blurry, but not in a negative way, in a very visually appealing way. So I learned how to use that technique in my video production. I learned how to play with the settings on my camera in order to have that effect. Um, and it's also because Andy Lau is acting while Wong Kar-wai is using that effect. I think so it both serves as like an example for me to learn how to act and how to make films. Yeah.
Would you like to be an actor, even if though you were like going into like a more creative writing field, or is it something that you just pursued because you were interested in it?
I think I'm simply because I love it. And it also starts with photography because my old man, he loved his cameras. He took pictures for the family, and he taught me how to take pictures. So I started playing with my cameras. I worked for school. Then I realized, you always have this recording button on your camera, so why not use that? And then I learned how to make videos, get into the video production class, and learn how to, like make step printing or all that. So I think it's all came from my interest, then really thinking about, hey, actually, I'm gonna be the Andy Lau that we have in 2025, like that.
Yes, no, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah,
Totally makes sense.
yeah.
No, I agree. Like even I have a minor that has actually well, I think like your minor connects better with your major than mine does, to be fair. But I have a horticulture science minor right now as a business student, and people are like, "Oh, do you want to go into this field? Do you want to be like in agriculture, like in a nursery management business?" I'm like, "No," and like, why would you take this as a minor? I'm like, well, I wanted to. I was interested in it. I like growing my own plants. I think it's interesting to know how to grow plants, and people underestimate the impact of like also learning about things that might be not related to your major directly, but realizing how much they can impact also your work as like a business owner. I don't know. Like, for instance, you're a business owner, you open your own like office, and you realize that plants contribute to your well-being by having them just in the space. They can decrease anxiety as well as stress levels of your coworkers. So knowing what plants you put in the corner can actually help you a great deal to just feel better in the space you're in. But you think like, oh, why would you learn about plants? You're not a business student, right? And that's the same thing. I think it's so fascinating that you went into like having like a minor and also major that are they're correlated but also they are different at the same time. But I can imagine how much like photography or movies can inspire you to write a story too, because they have also stories, right? And just like seeing it like on screen as well as writing it where people just imagine it. I think it's a really nice put together combination.
Yeah.
No, I don't
I
know.
yeah, I think text, words or literature, whatever you call it, text, photos, videos all have their advantage, all have what they're really good at, quote unquote at, or they also have what they're lack of. Like with the text, it's only simply text. For those who don't love the text, like reading in general, I think probably they think it's too plain. Just looking at the words, the text is too long. My eyes hurts. It could be a reason why, or simply because with the text, um, there are so many imaginations.
Speaking of that, actually, there's a study done. I just saw it recently that people, we always study about how people learn and how people comprehend information and how it works for everyone differently. But the interesting study is how people actually imagine things in their head. And apparently, not everyone does see pictures. Some people have a voice in their head, others see a picture, the thirds can visualize things, like almost be in a room in their head and move things around. Others don't even have either of the two things. You maybe don't even have an inner voice. It's so interesting and fascinating to me. But I realize if I wouldn't have the ability, because I think for me it's like both inner voice and seeing images a lot of times, I would be, I don't know, not enjoying reading probably, because you just have, like you said, just text, right? I wouldn't have the ability to like see the scenery, the setting, like you said, Hong Kong 80s, like the dim light. We have like the like streets that are like decorated in a certain way. Um, I don't know. I think it would kind of discourage me from reading if I wouldn't see these things. Because for me, it's like an inspiration to sketch, for instance, to draw. Because I see these things and no one had imagined it before
Yeah,
because it's my own imagination and my
yeah,
own combination of
yeah,
things.
yeah. I understand that. Yeah, yeah. I think because I saw your pictures before, and I think um, I feel the same way. Like, say for example, we're gonna write a scene about this character wearing Andy Lau's denim jacket, walking on the street, go to go to get his girlfriend, and his bike. So how would I start this before I write the whole scene? I would in my head I would ask myself how would I organize the shots as if we are making a film or a short video, or how can we turn this scene into a part of the film or into a series of shots. Then I was thinking about the cinematography, I was thinking about the shot skills, camera movements, and after I have this shot list, how I would organize the whole scene, I would turn the image into the words. It could start by we see this character walking, turn at the corner, and then the camera follows him behind, and that's how I would write this story. Could probably start with how he kicked the can on the floor, and then it goes up. We describe his jeans, his denim jackets, and then think about the cinematography. Over the shoulder, the POV shots. We see what he see. We see the other side of the corner on the street, and then we could describe it in words. What's on the street, right? We could describe how people are dressing differently. They probably dress in the way that we dress in 2025. So it creates this contrast, between the rest of the general public and this guy. He's wearing 80s denim jacket, blue jeans, all that. So probably through the contrast, we see his character.
When you create this picture, what my head does, I'm going to describe it, is this really crazy thing. You know the lamps that I used to, I don't know, well, I saw it in Japan, like for instance, or like I haven't been to Japan, but I've seen a lot of photography that is used there. You know these like red lamps that you have hanging by restaurants? So you have these like wooden stores, restaurants with these lamps. It's more dim, and he's walking down the street. The street is wet because we just had rain. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. That is a thing. But the water reflects the light that is really warm and
Yeah.
has this red undertone. And the interesting thing is, you said he turns around the corner and sees the other world type of thing. And so the way my brain works for my art is he has like a circle around him that is completely warm, has a red lining, red, like orange, and everything, like even the floor around him is the same color. But the moment he steps and sees the other world, it's like a blue. it's like completely like a grayish tone. And so he sees like his world that is behind his back completely in a different setup. And then the setup in front of him is completely modern.
Yeah.
This is what I see.
Yeah, see, I think that is nuanced with the text because I'm speaking words. If I'm showing you, like if I really, produced this what I've just said in videos, then we would probably share the same imaginations. So that is like the both goods and bads of each medium: text, photos, videos. You get
Yes.
that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because then, and that's why sometimes I enjoy reading the book first before the movie. Because sometimes movies disappoint me. And sometimes also movies give me the false image that I like of characters, how they could look like, but I didn't imagine them this way. And I got super upset about that. I'm like, oh no, I thought the person's blonde. Like, this is like the most like, it's such a small detail, but it makes such a big difference on how we imagine a person. And yeah, I enjoy just having first the book and then the actual movie, unless I like the movie so much that I'm like, I want to know more details, and then I'm gonna read it after that. Yes, there's like Studio Ghibli movies, like Totoro and like all the other ones. Like one that is really famous, House Moving Castle, was a lot of people don't know that, but it was based on a book that you can actually buy and read. And it has so many more details than the actual movie, but the movie got more famous than the book. But it's also like sometimes you don't know. Sometimes the movie gets famous, and then you can't unseen a certain picture in your head, and the book doesn't feel right anymore. Um, but yeah, do you have maybe like a last thing that if we're already in this field? Speaking of poetry, do you like poetry? Do you enjoy poetry, or is it not?
I try to write poetry before, and I wrote mm, 3 or 4, not that much, no, because I feel like it's already challenging when I'm writing poetry in Chinese in my native language, because I see it as like it's short, it has its own rhetoric. What I'm thinking is that it always condenses all the information, all the images, all you want to talk about in a very, very limited text length. So it's very challenging in the way, in your writing styles, in the word choice, you know. And also you got to think about like the rhetoric, like how you want it rhyme, both make it rhyme and also make it rhymes and also, successfully deliver what you want to convey.
Do you? Isn't it challenging if you think about like Mandarin, having like all the different how do you call it in English? The like the signs that how you write like when you write in Mandarin. Um, it's they have several meanings, right? And you can like dissect it depending how like the context of, well, I don't know that much about like Chinese. I have a friend who studied Chinese. Um, and it's just like, how does it differ if you're writing in Chinese versus in English, where you have one word, and even though we do have certain meanings and like metaphors and like all the different like styles you can like use, um, how does it differ to write in these two languages?
When I'm thinking in Chinese. I think that's more direct, like that's more helpful to explain what I want to say. I think in Chinese. I don't think in English. So when I wrote down what I'm thinking, I could record all the details because it's my native language. Like I don't miss anything that I want to write about. When I'm thinking in English, I would first think about I would first think in Chinese, and then I would translate my thought in English because I need to speak it in English.
That's interesting because I don't do that anymore. Like I completely stopped doing that. I don't translate. There are certain maybe topics where I have to translate, but I never see languages as the translation of a different language anymore. What I mean by that, if I speak in English, I don't think of in German and then translate it at all.
Yeah. I think, I mean, it's definitely not every time. Like when we're talking to each other, I'm thinking in English. But when you're asking how I wrote my story, I think about the scene that happened in China. So when I'm thinking about that scene, I'm thinking in Chinese. And when I start doing that, I'm gonna translate my thought. I'm gonna translate what I'm thinking about that scene from Chinese to in English. So if it's more daily conversation, it's definitely in English to English. But if we're talking about more nuanced, more detailed description that requires lots of explanations, requires a lot of words to explain, then I'm definitely gonna go through this process. Much like how I write, like I wrote my manuscripts both in Chinese and English because I think when I'm writing in Chinese, I can explain my thoughts using the correct words.
Yeah, I I totally agree. It's like my realization was when I was reading so many books that were translate into German, where like they would double the size, and I was like, whoa, I've been reading like 400-page books that are actually only 200 pages long in English. It's because in German we have less words than in English. English actually is difficult as a language because of the amount of words you have, not the grammar, not the language itself, pronunciation, etc. It's literally just the variety of words you can use in certain settings, and not everyone knows even all words that are existing. In German, though, we have less words, but at the same time, we have like we like to describe things. We like longer sentences. We like to have like a more cohesive story where it's like not just getting to the point. That's the struggle, by the way. If I can't get to the point, it's literally a thing we do in German all the time. We explain things, we walk around the topic, even though we're really direct as human beings. But at the same time, the way we just like to write is so much different than in English. And then Russian, for instance, since I also speak Russian, there I would say there are a lot of words that don't exist in either of the languages. And that's the struggle. That's when you have a word that just you can't translate it. It's not translatable in any language because it's so specific to the language that it's almost like the description of the word would not be the right description because
Mm-hmm.
it would never ever display fully what the meaning is of this word.
Yeah. See, I think people told me that if I wrote in Chinese, it's gonna cost time because we're submitting in English. So I means I gotta translate the manuscript in English. Yes, it's time consuming, but you gotta think about the whole scene has happened in China. So you're gonna describe the scene. I mean, I think the best way to describe the scene is through Chinese.
No, seriously, it is because if I think of traditional things, words, even dishes, food, cultural things that like certain, I don't know, placements, even city names. Let's just start with something simple, right? How many times do you struggle with the fact when people translate them from Russian to English and I'm like, this is not how you pronounce this word. This is not how you write it. What is happening? Like, you just like, you don't understand how words work in Russian. And I think like if you have like a Chinese culture that you're trying to integrate into your story, that would be the same thing, right? Where it's like, oh, it's so much better because it's actually used the right words, it's the right setting, you know
Hmm.
exactly what is happening. It's also your native language.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, if we can condense the whole thing in, well, I was thinking about one word, but I'm gonna say two words. Word choice.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's about word choice.
Word choice.
Yeah.
Maybe like kind of a little bit going away from poetry. Do you have advice for people, especially if they want to study in the United States, coming from China in your specific path? Is this something that you feel like, oh, you've learned over being 4 years at state and realize, I wish I would have known that when I was applying?
I think so. I mean, there are websites. There are websites.
But not like on the bureaucratic way, more like life lessons. I know it's difficult maybe, but like life lessons you've learned that you wish you would have known when you went into like English
In creative writing
creative writing. Yeah.
Okay. Hmm. Be aware, I mean, or do know that it's going to be very challenging when you, I think working in creative writing is very artsy because we're producing literature. Literature is art. We are producing another form of art, but you got to understand that people are still, working for their life to get paid. So what we idealized, what we wrote may not be appreciated by other people, not because they don't like us or they don't like our literatures. It's simply because they're busy. And also, so you got to understand that, getting a job as an international student with a creative writing background could be challenging. But you also need to know that pursuing what you love is really important. Because I think now I'm applying to library science, both because it's very career focused and also I'm still interacting with books, still interacting using the skills, communication skills I learned both in film class, in creative writing class, and I'm still, working with books. It's still something I love. So I'm still doing something I love, and it's because I'm fully interested in these fields. I am willing, to try it. Doesn't matter how difficult it could be.
What is library science?
Library science.
Yes.
Um, what is library science?
Yes.
I think it's a very romantic field, if you
Okay.
describe it.
Okay.
It's you could narrow it down. I mean, people sometimes refer to as library and information science because sometimes you will find those programs under the same department. Uh, but you can narrow it down into library science and information science. Library science is definitely more chess. Um, we we do interact with technologies because I mean library is definitely as at the forefront of this technology application. So you work with how to use technology to um, better serve for people who need access to books, informations, technologies could be like makerspace, all that. But you also have like the traditional side of libraries in library science, like the book preservations or index organizations. So I think it's like library science brought me to see the hub, which is the library. I consider it as hub because I think that is all kinds of technologies. Paper is a technology, digitized technologies, or like informations. People is informations, figures is informations, words, text is informations. I see it as hub where all these informations and technology intersects with each other. So library science is, mm, you could be archivist, you could be um, people who work in the special collections like book preservations or digitize the old books. You could also work in like this market outreach. You could also work as like more communication focused. For example, uh, cross department like academic libraries. You work because English departments, for example, needs access from DH Hill. That's where we need these people. If you need to teach a class in DH Hill, that's where we need these people.
DHL is a library.
DH Hill is a
Yes.
library, yes. Or like you can also work in public libraries or even like business sectors.
Okay. Yeah. I think it was just important because I think when we think of library science, it's like we imagine this librarian who is sitting in a library and just like giving out books. But I think it's much more, right, than that. If you think about it, it's the same as well, any other field that you think of. We always have a really secluded, really small image of what people could do with their degree. but there is so much more than that if you think about it.
Yeah, that is how I used to imagine library as, or library science as. But then it's because I took class in the HL library before, so I see, oh, there's actually more than I thought, and it's closely related to my background, English background, creative writing background. So they require skills that I've learned. So yeah.
Would you say, like, maybe to round it up, with this experience, do you have advice that you would like to give the listeners? Anything that we just literally talked about? Any last words? Something like that.
Um, I mean, people always say I say some cliche things, but I think uh, I definitely understand life is hard. I've with people who, you know, who has been through a lot of things, negative things in the life, but I think know that you can change them, or you could bring happiness to them. Know that you are more than just people who talk, simply talk with them. More than, know that we are more than just sitting here talking to each other. We are sharing our stories. And if we see the connections, if we see how we can connect to each other's stories, we would find the happiness. So know that your words could bring happiness to people, or sometimes, it could change. I wouldn't say change their life. It's like too cliche. I was like change their days, or, their focus in a short period of time. And this change is mostly positive and based on my experience. So yeah, definitely, know that people, you are needed by other people, and see how you can bring joy to other people. And of course, do what you love to do and go back.
I love that. I love
Yeah,
that as an
yeah.
ending. Thank you so much. I feel like we could have talked for another hour, and probably cover even more. That was like not even enough time. But I really hope it's gonna work out with the master's program.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
if I ever see a book published by you and it's in English, I don't think I can read.
See,
I don't think.
I would probably write more stories after I go back, because I'll be done with my applications, and I'll fully dedicate into my old field. I love, something I love to do.
Well, I've read a part of one of your stories once when you like sent it over to
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
and I liked it. So we will see. Like maybe you have like your first fan who's gonna read your.
There you go.
I'm not gonna dress like you, even though you have a beautiful style. Like I actually like your style, but sorry, it's not gonna be like you trying to copy Andy Lau with your style. I'm joking.
Hey, like I said, it's not copy, it's inspirations. Right? We need word choice, right? Word choice. It's never copy. It's like borrowing the inspirations from what we have in the past, what we appreciate.
And then adopting it to your life.
There you
Oh,
go.
beautiful.
There you go.
Thank you so much for being here and like recording it literally 2 days before your flight.
It's all right. My pleasure.
It's crazy. And I really hope that whoever listened to it, may you pursue your dreams and actually go into creative writing if you're interested in that.
Yeah, there you go. We need more people.
Thank you so much.
There you go. Have
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.